Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to say Shabbat Shalom, at least to the people who are here with us online and on the field. So, to the folks who are online with us, we have a wonderful crowd here on the field. I love Tybal's background. So Tybal has like Heshet, she has a rainbow in her background. So hello and Shabbat Shalom to Joanna and Batya and Tybal and Bella and Annette. And it's kind of a funky setup, but I want to be able to see you and also see the folks who are on the field. So hello to all of us who are here on the field. And we are going to begin services. Oh, I don't have a siddur for Shabbat, but that's important. So grab a siddur. We begin for Shabbat afternoon in the Lev Shalem on page 214. And we begin on in the other Siddurim on pages. I thought I was being so handy with my luach. We begin on two. Nope. Yeah. Ooh, 226, 558. Found it. There we go. Okay. אשר יושבי ביתך עוד יללו חסדיך, אשר עם שככה לו, אשר עם שאדוני אלוהיו, תהילה לדוד ארמים חלם. תהילת אדוני ידבר פי, ויברך בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך ים יתהווה עד עולם הללויה, ובא לציון גואל שבי פשע פי יעקב נאום אדוני ונשמע. ואתה קדוש יושב תהילות ישראל וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. ותישאני רוח ושמע אחרי קורש קדוש ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומות. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני, Adonai chafetz l'man tziko. Yagdil Torah ve'yadir. Chatzi Kaddish. Hikatav hikatav shemei rabba. V'madura kirtei. V'yamlich malchutei. B'chayichon v'yameichon. U'chayidecho beit Yisrael. Hagalav izman karif. Imru amein. Yehi shemei rabba v'varach. V'lanu le'el maya. Yiparach v'yishapach. V'yipar v'yishman v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal. Shemei tekudesha berichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Damiram be'amah. V'imru amein. So we're rising here on the field. If you're joining us from home, you're welcome to stand as well in anticipation of the Torah service. V'ani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim b'rov chastecha Hanini b'mei jishecha. Wait a minute. They took my Torah out of here. 1 second. I want my Pilch Torah. Make sure there's one that's a little crazy. And I'm gonna go on a Torah parade to find well, no, we can just roll the Torah. We have enough time to do it. We'll just take out a Torah and we'll roll a little bit. We'll have some fun. All good. No, it's fine. We'll have fun. Yeah, this will be much faster. We got this. Okay. Well, that was a fun surprise. Vayivin Aharon vayomer Moshe Kum Adonai v'yafutzu oivecha v'yenusim v'sanecha v'yivanecha Ki misyon teitzei Torah u'dvar Adonai miYerushalayim Baruch shenatan Torah l'Amo Yisrael v'kedushato. That stays right there. Gadlu l'Adonai iti u'nerome ma'shemo yachtav v'cha Adonai gedula v'gvura v'tifer v'netzach v'hahon hichol v'shamayim u'varetz l'cha Adonai malacha v'min yisei l'chol erosh Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'shachavu le'adom raglav kadoshu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'shachavu le'arkocho hi kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. All right. Who wants to come up and roll a Torah with me? All right. Volunteering? Okay. So fun. You can be seated. Thanks, Isaac. Look at this eager team of Gabaim. So I'll tell you, this synagogue owns about something in the realm of 15 kosher Sifrei Torah, which is pretty cool, given that some communities only have one. And we rolled almost all of them for Simchat Torah. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'd love for you to just kind of, I'm going to hold this and you're just going to stay still, okay? Just no rug burn, okay? Good. That's the only workout I get. Last week. 10 Commandments. Call out cool stuff when you see it. You just adjust. What do we got? Bamidbar? Bamidbar. Okay, so we're in Vayikra. Short book. has some dough they need me to roll. Thank you.
Must be good in making challahs.
Yes. There's Shemot. At least it's a nice clear Torah. Okay. Stevie, would you like to be my Gabbai Shani? Awesome. Would anybody like an Aliyah today for a special occasion? Huh? Anyone? Carl, it doesn't have to be a special occasion. Will you take an Aliyah? You look like you might take an Aliyah. So I'll give you the first Aliyah. Okay. Anybody else take an Aliyah? It's been a while. You'll take one. Isaac will take one. Tommy, you want to take one? Will you take a third one? Gary? You'll take one? Okay, great. Fantastic. So, oh, look at that. Okay, almost there. Oh, Song of the Sea. Okay. Pretty Torah. Beautifully square Torah.
Rolling back time.
Is anybody left-handed here? Oh. But are you a Hagba left-hander, though? Yeah? No? Eh? Maybe? Are you a Hagba doer? Not on the left side. Not on the left side. Okay.
Well,
Maybe? Are you? Can you? Okay, great. Fantastic. Take second hand.
what's there?
What's there? It does, yeah. It's good because it means it doesn't rip.
Are we reading the pressure?
No. No, hang on. Let me just readjust a little. Okay.
I have a question,
There we go.
which I have been wondering why. Sometimes they pray to the front of the Torah and sometimes to this side.
Sometimes reading this way, sometimes that way.
Can you tell me,
Different minhagim, different customs.
really, that's all it is?
That's it. All right, so now we're gonna roll. Let me take this for a second.
Mizrach is there.
Yeah.
So I was confused for a while.
No. Okay, so we should be here. Avraham, Cain, so we're almost there. I just want to go about this. All right, so we can have our first Oleg come up. Fine. Just there. Just very, very tight on this scroll. Perfect. Here. Okay, great. Thank you for the help with the roll. Great. I will bring up my books again. All right. I hope you're having as much fun at home as we are here on the field. We're going to read from Parshat Noach. It is the beginning of Toldot Noach, the generations of Noach. You can find it, chapter 6, verse 9 of the book of Bereshit. We are going to call up our first Aliyah. It's you. Okay. Hang on. Yeah. Oh, great.
מתביישת לעלות לתורה.
What's that?
למה אני מתביישת לעלות לתורה?
אני לא יודעת, אבל that's another שיחה. We can talk about it later. I would love to have you up, okay? Okay. ותגלה ותראה מלכותו עלינו בזמן קרוב, ויחון פליטתנו פליטת עמו בית ישראל, לכנו חסד ורחמים ורצון ונאמר אמן הכל, הבו גודל אלוהינו תנו כבוד לתורה, יעמוד. חיים. בן ישעיה וחיה לעלייה הראשונה, ברוך שנתן תורה לישראל מקדושתו, ואתם מדבקים אדוני אליכם, חיים כולכם היום. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. need what's that? You literally don't know? Yeah, you're right. Hang on. Ayla. There you go. Eile toldot Noach ish tzadik tamim haya b'dorotav et Elohim hitalech Noach vivaled Noach shalosh banim et Shem et Cham vet Yafet v'tishchat haaretz lifnei ותשחט הארץ לפני האלוהים ותמלא הארץ חמס וירא אלוהים את הארץ והנה נשחטה כי תשחית כל כי השחית כל בשר את דרכו על הארץ ויאמר אלוהים לנוח קיץ כל בשר בא לפני בא לפני כי מלאה הארץ חמס מפניהם והנני משחיתם את הארץ עשה לך תיבת עצי גופר קינים תעשה את התיבה וחפרת אתה אותה מבית ומחוץ בחופר, וזה אשר תעשה אותה 300 אמה אורך התיבה, 50 אמה רוחבה, ו30 אמה קומתה, צוהר תעשה לתיבה, ואל אמה תכלנה מלמעלה, ופתח התיבה בצאתה תשים תחתיים 32 תעשה
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת חיי עולם נטע בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה
אמן יעמוד יצחק החזן יצחק בן שמואל ומרים לעלייה השנייה right here
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן ואני הנני מביא את המבוא מים על הארץ לשחט כל בשר אשר בהו רוח חיים מתחת השמיים כל אשר הארץ יקבע והקימותי את בריתי איתך ובאת אל התיבה אתה אותה ובניך ואשתך ושבע בניך איתך ומכל החי מכל בשר שניים מכל תביא על התיבה לחיות איתך זכר ונקבה יהיו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. ישר כוח יעמוד. דוב בן הרמזרה לעלייה השלישית. Baruch Adonai Barach. Olam Vayed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torto. Baruch Atah Adonai noten HaTorah.
Amen. Me'ahov minehu umina ve'emal v'mina mikol rebes hadama l'minehu shanayim mikol yavihu elecha l'chayot l'chayot v'yatakath lecha mikol me'achel asher yachel v'savta elecha v'hayad lecha v'lahem le'ochlaha v'yas Noach kechol asher tiva oto Elohim kenaseh kenasa.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chai olam netabat betochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten HaTorah.
Amen. Ya'amod hamagbiya. Gary, will you be a dresser and also spot him? Ya'amod hagolel. Isaac's gonna lift, but I'd like you to spot him because this is a crazy lift.
You could have lifted it too. That's
Hey, Han, let me get you a chair though. Wait. I gotta get you a chair.
I mean, a chair. Let me just see that.
Okay. I'm gonna lift and wrap the Torah. Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe. That's why we have a spotter. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba'avitomecha shar. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba'avitomecha me'ushar. Tirach v'chai darchi noam v'chom litivotah shalom. Tirach v'chai darchi noam v'chom litivotah shalom. Yainai nai, yainai nai, yainai nai 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 nai, yainai nai 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 nai, yainai nai 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 nai, yainai nai 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 nai. Ya nai 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 nai, ya nai nai, hai nai nai, ya nai 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 nai, ya nai 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 nai, ya nai 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 nai, ya nai 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 nai, ya nai 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 nai. Hashivenu Hashem Hashem Elecha. V'nashuva chaydesh yameinu, chaydesh yameinu, kekedem. Is there anybody first here standing on the field who wants an Almale Rachamim said in honor of a loved one today? It's an anniversary of yard site for anyone here on the field. Is there anybody who is on Zoom who wants to wave at me or otherwise indicate that you have a yard site for a loved one to be marked this week? If not, then we'll return to our Sidurim to return the Torah to the Ark in just a moment. I'll take that from you. Okay. This yard actually doesn't affix if it goes down here, so 1 second. Okay, let me just open up the Torah page. It needs a chain. That one needs a chain, yeah. We have about, yeah. Okay. Well, we're prepared to return the Sefer Torah to the Ark. Ya'alelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav Shemo levato, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, v'yaron keren le'amo, tila l'chol chasida, livnei Yisrael am karobo, hallelujah, l'David mizmor, l'Adonai haaretz umloa. Mihu ze melech hakavod, Adonai tzavot hu melech hakavod, Selah. השיבינו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם. We can continue now with Chatzi Kaddish. יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, בהמה דברך ירצה וימליך מלכותי בחייך וימיכון וחי לכל בית ישראל, פגלה בזמן קרבי ואמרו אמן, יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עמי הומיה, יפרח וישבח ויפר וישמע ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי לקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן. We continue now with the whispered private Amidah. We are going to do a full repetition after that. If you are in the Lev Shalem Siddur, which we have here on the field, you can find that on page 226 in the Lev Shalem, and you can find it just on the next page after Hatzi Kaddish in either of the other two Siddurim. If you haven't yet completed your own private Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We're going to continue now with the repetition of the Amidah. When we get to the Kiddush, I invite you to join together with me in the Kedusha. And when we get to the end of the Kedusha with the blessing, Ha'el HaKadosh, You're welcome to be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Hayel HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot U'Mevi Goel Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Fokeinu Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Ata Adonai Magin Avraham Ufokei Tzara Ata Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechayim Eitim Ata Rav Lehoshia Mashiv HaRuach Umarid Hagashem Mechakel Chayim Bechesed Mechayim Eitim Berachamim Rabim Somech Nofelim Verofech Olim Umatir Hasurim Umkayem Emunato Lishene Afar Michamocha Bal Gevurot Umi Melach Melech Mimitum Chaye Matzmiach Yeshua B'ne'eman Ata D'achayot Meitim Baruch Ata Adonai Mechaye HaMeitim Nikadesh et Shimcha Ba'olam Kashem Shemachti Shimoto B'Shmei Ma'aram Kakatuv Al Yad Nevi'echa V'kara Zel Zev Yamar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot, Melech haaretz kevodo, Lumatam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch kevod Adonai mimekomo, Udivrei kodecha katuv le'mor. Imloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Zion, Lidor v'ador, Hallelujah, Lidor v'ador nagid God lecha, Unetzach netzachim, kedushatecha nakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu, Mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, Ki el melech gadol, V'kadosh ata baruch ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. אתה אחד ושמך אחד, ומקיימך ישראל גוי אחד בארץ, תפארת גדולה ועטרת ישועה, יום מנוחה וקדושה, לימך נתת, אברהם יקל, יצחק ירדני, יעקב ומניו ינוחו בו, מנוחת אהבה ומדבה, מנוחת אמת ואמונה, מנוחת שלום ושלווה, והשקט ובטח, מנוחה שלמה שאתה רוצה בך, יכירו בניך וידעו כי מתוך היא מנוחתם, ויום מנוחתם יקדישו את שמך, אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך, שבענו מטובך, ושמחנו בישועתך, וטהר ליבנו לעבדך באמת, והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו, ויעבר רצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בך ישראל מקדשי שמך, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת, רצה אדוני אלוהינו, עמך ישראל להביא תפילתם, לשבת עבודה לרעיתך, ותפילתם יאהבה תקבל ברצון, ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך, ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, המחזיר שכינתו לציון, מודים אנחנו לך, ששם לנו את זה. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, ומרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך, מעולם קיווינו לך, ועל כולם יברך, ויתרום שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד, ולכל החיים ירדוך סלע, ויהללו את שמך באמת על ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע ברוך. אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך ולחנאי להודות, שלום רב על ישראל עמך, ועל כל יושבי תבל תשים לעולם, כי אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום, וטוב בעיניך, לברך את עמך ישראל, וכל עת תמחושה בשלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני, הברך את עמו ישראל, בשלום. Kaddish Shalem 230. Yitkadav, Yitkadash, Shemirabah, Biamati Rakir, Tevim Lichmachote, Bechayachon, Yamechon, Bechayid, Chobet Israel, Bagalav Isman Karivim Ruhamin, Yehi Shemirabah, Mevarach, Lialam, Mehomaya, Yitvarach, Vishabach, Vipar, Vishaman, Vitnase, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitala, Shemay, Tukudashabari, Hulela. Min birchata v'shirata, jush b'chata v'nechmata damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Tit kabat saladono jantakol Yisrael kadam avuhon divishmai havimru amen. Yesh lamara b'amin shemaya v'chayim halinu ve'alkol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'alkol Yisrael v'imru amen. Aleinu, aleinu l'shabeach ladon kol. Hakatu b'tortach Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed v'nehemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad. Mourners Kaddish. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah. V'yama divra kirute v'yamlich malchute. V'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chaye decho beit Yisrael. V'hagala uv'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei tekudsha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Jush b'chata v'nechamata damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Yeshar Koach to everybody who participated in Mincha. We are going to move on to a little Seudah Shlishit before we do learning. What I'd like to ask is this: whether you're here with us in person or you are on Zoom, I encourage you to get something to nourish yourself. Doesn't have to be food, but if it's food, I encourage you to do that. And we're going to do that for the next 10 minutes or so until a little bit after 6:30. What I do want to remind you of is that we're still in the time of COVID, even if we're outdoors. So one way that we can help to make other people more comfortable is that when we approach food, we can do that with this is, I don't know, I'm looking at the people on Zoom. You don't need to do this, but masking when you go and approach food and drink is one way to help other people feel more comfortable, because that's time when we're sharing, we're approaching the food that we're going to take for ourselves. And then when we're sitting down, we can also space ourselves a little bit and give some distance, but we can choose our own seats around. So that's one thing I want to encourage us to do, even though it's optional for those of us who are vaccinated on the field to be masked. I do want to encourage us to wear those masks when we go and take food, since we're serving Jews today. So let's take about 10 minutes to grab something to nourish ourselves, and then we will come together to study some Torah. The sheets were sent out. I have physical sheets here on the field for us, and I'll see you in a moment. Oh, and there is hand sanitizer out here, and also hand washing stations with soap over there if you want to actually wash, both for ritual and hygienic purposes. This morning? Yeah. That's so bizarre. I wonder how that could be, because we send the Zoom to live stream. We send the Zoom straight through the live stream. That is so strange. the way that they came out is so weird. So I gotta see what this experience is.
Treatment. Finally, the CDC has just
Yeah.
allowed it this weekend, and I feel like this whole COVID thing finally is going to be moving forward. We'll be able to run, positive.
That's right. Is there news today that there's a pill treatment that's coming?
Yes, it was Friday actually.
Oh, it's Friday that there is.
From Merck. That's the drug company.
That's very exciting.
And they just fast tracked it and everything. So
That's so exciting. I feel very positive about that.
yes.
That is great. I should not worry about the Arkansas one being picked up, huh? Let's try something. Okay, we're going to start learning in about 2 minutes. So I'm letting the people on Zoom know and YouTube as well that we're about to start learning. Again, in just a minute or two, I'll hand out the papers to everyone who's seated here as well. If you have, if you're at home and you have a Tanakh and you want to follow along and learn with us, we are going to be learning from the beginning of Parshat Noach, part of what I read, which is from the 6th chapter, chapter 6. All right. So the people at home, or wherever you are, and I are going to learn with our mouths not full. Mostly. I don't know. I don't know what Joanna, Batya, Tybal, Brandt, Annette, they could all be noshing. Enjoy. We're having some bagels on the field. I think that's kind of nice, but you could have a bagel at home too if you'd like to. Next time we'll give you the menu ahead of time so you can match us. It'd be very cute. So this is a little bit of light learning. You know that I sometimes bring a little bit of heavier learning on the Parsha. This was a step back a little bit later this week in enormous font, the way that it was printed here. So the people who have printed their own at home may have a slightly, I don't know if it's going to be easier or harder for you at home. I wanted to talk about two different relatively unrelated issues with Noah and the ark. And one of them is something that I began thinking about last year, and the experience of Noah and what it was like being in the ark and going into the ark and trusting going into the ark with the oncoming, approaching flood. And the other issue, related arguably, but maybe arguably unrelated, is the issue of the passage of time and the experience of the passage of time for Noah and the others who were on the ark, the other human beings who were on the ark. So there's a piece that I just read from the 6th chapter, they just chanted, that talks about God's establishment of a covenant with Noah in the context of a verse. In the context of a verse that has to do with God's encouraging Noah, giving him instructions to enter the ark. Now, God has to tell Noah both to get on the ark and to get off the ark. Last year, when we were very first coming out of quarantine summer, the very first time that anybody was coming out of a lockdown from Los Angeles, we talked a little bit during Parshat Noach about the experience in 2020, if you can believe this. A year ago, we were 6 months into the experience of COVID, and we were talking about the other end of this deal and how God had to tell Noah, no, really, it's okay to get off the ark, I promise. It's time to get off now. That study we can come back to another time. But of course, it would seem obvious that God had to tell Noah, okay, the flood is coming. It's time to get on. The context in which God tells Noah he's got to get on, though, is cause for a lot of commentators commenting on why that might be connected to the notion of covenant. So the verse goes like this. Vani, hineni mevi et hamabul. God says, I'm bringing the flood. Ma'im al haaretz l'shachet kol basar. Water's going to come and it's going to strike down all the living things, okay? Asher bo ruach chayim. All the stuff that has the spirit of life in it. Mitachat hashamayim, under the heavens. Kol asher ba'aretz yigva. Remember, we just had creation. We just did that this morning. Now next week he's up and destroying it. And then this verse, which you have on your source sheets as well. V'hakimoti et briti itach. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall, what? Uvata el hateva ata. Uvanecha ve'ishtecha unshevanecha itach. By the way, if we were doing this in a study with that other verse that I just mentioned, we would talk about one of my favorite words, tikbolet, the parallelism in the authorship, because the instruction also goes in this order, in the instruction to leave the ark, and the commentators also have a lot to say about Noach being instructed to leave the ark, and then his wife and his kids being instructed to leave separately. Like, why list them all out? The Torah doesn't waste a single word. And here also, they're asked to enter, each of them instructed to enter separately. But why I'll establish my covenant with you and you should enter the ark? Why hakimoti et briti? And a lot of you know that I get hooked on the vavs a lot in the text. U vata el hateva. What could that u possibly mean in this verse? So you tell me, what could that u possibly mean in this verse? Unfortunately, I'm not going to be unmuting, I don't think, unless, maybe Hector's hanging out there to unmute Brant and Joanna and those folks as well. But at least let's start with the folks on the field and then I'll go to Zoom. Yes. What could it mean? It could change it to the opposite, right? It could be vava yipuch. It could switch to the opposite tense, right? Ooh, vata could be the opposite. It could be but. It could be conditional. Well, right? A conditional. That is, right? A conditional. That is if. Great. That's great. Yeah, conditional. I like that. Ooh, vata el hateva. Good. I think that vav packs a lot of context here. U vata el hateva. I will establish va hakimoti. That vav in and of itself has a lot of power. And I will establish my covenant. And you will go to the ark. And then repeats, you and your children. So let's look at a couple of commentaries and what they have to say about why covenant is what's promised in this moment. Because we've seen covenant before, but that's only because we've read the Torah before. Right? We've seen covenant before, but that's only because we've read the Torah before. Are there Jews yet? Nope. Have we met? Who have we met yet? We've met Adam and Chava. Those are the only people we've met, right? So far. Those are our only characters and their kids. Right. That's it. We've just met we're only now meeting the next generation with Noah. So, next generations. There's a lot of people are born, but we're only now meeting the next generation who aren't background characters, okay? We're only meeting the next protagonist, yeah? So this is the first time that we get a Brit in Noah, but it is not the first mention of Brit, and it's going to come up later in the packet. What a great planted question. Thank you for bringing that up. It's going to be source like 5. Very good. We're going to get there. Okay, so the Orach Chaim says the following. We're going to do this because we're doing this frontally. Instead of me reading at you, I'm going to do this in kind of like an interpretive summation of each of these verses. Also because we don't have all that much time. Like the sun's going down. We're going to hit Mariv. So the Orach Chaim says this. And you can read these word for word as I go through. But instead, I'm going to give this to you because some of you are munching on bagels or, I don't know, maybe Joanna has gummy bears at home. Something like that, right? You just seem like a gummy bear kind of person. So you'll tell me later if I'm wrong. So the Orach Chaim says, well, Noah would have, of course, thought of the ark as a death trap. Right? God says, the flood waters are coming, and I am going to wipe everything that has a Ruach Chaim off the face of the earth. Kol basar, every living flesh. Now go get on that boat. And Noah goes, what? I'm sorry, what? Excuse me, right? Because what we don't have is a covenantal relationship really with anyone in Noach's generation. We know that Noach is Sadiq Tamim B'dortav. We know that he is exceptionally righteous in his generation. But what we don't have is a relationship yet with him and God where there's any kind of anything except for maybe an upheld promise that God won't kill him. That's all God and he have between them, which is what Or Chaim comes to say. God has to remind Noah of the promise that God has made that the ark isn't a death trap. Wouldn't you think it is? Getting on a boat to ride out onto to get on a boat as the floodwaters, remember that not to ride out onto floodwaters, to get onto an ark where the flood waters are going to rain down and then rise around you, right? It's very fear-inducing, to say the extreme least. So, of course, he believes that it's a death trap, but this is his reassurance. The Hakimoti et Briti, he says, first, I will establish my covenant with you, and I'm establishing my pact with you. Go ahead, trust me, get on this ark. Maybe that was enough for him. And by the way, the Or Chaim takes the time to say, and Rashi is very wrong, because he sometimes takes the time to say that. He says, Rashi understands that God is remembering Noah's good deeds. That's not the pshat. There is no such thing as a simple, plain meaning of the text, the pshat. That's for a whole other conversation, but I like that the Or Chaim takes the time to tell us, Rashi's wrong. It has nothing to do with God saying, you've done wonderful good deeds in the past. It's just God saying, hey, Noah, I know this is really scary. I'm establishing my covenant with you. Go ahead, get on board. If you flip to the next page, you start to get to the Hebrew of the Ramban of Nachmanides and his commentary on this. Now, the Ramban pops over to Ibn Ezra. The Ramban brings us Ibn Ezra on this. And Ibn Ezra says that this is in and of itself a sign. This is an oath in and of itself that God had actually sworn to Noah that he and his children won't die during the flood, even though that doesn't seem to be a clear promise at first. It doesn't seem to be clearly promised that he isn't going to be perishing in the flood, neither he nor his children. Now, this is by way of explanation of the thing that I said at first, right? Why list him and his wife and his children out, right? He says, V'hakimoti et briti ita uvata elateva. You're going to go to the ark, and it's going to be you, and it's going to be your partner, and it's going to be your kids, and you're going to be okay, right? This is his way of saying, you're all going to make it through this. Why does God not just say, you're all going to make it through this? God has funny ways. That's what Ramban and Ibn Ezra, I suppose, would say, right? And then he goes through this really long explication of v'hakimoti, meaning that I will fulfill an oath. V'hakimoti is something beyond Brit. This is something that we say, does this sound familiar? I have two chazanim sitting across from me. V'hakimoti et briti is something that we chant during the Zichronot part of the Machzor on both days of Rosh Hashanah. V'hakimoti et briti. It's a really meaningful pasuk, a really meaningful verse that we have in our literature. It's not just a verse about upholding a brit and a promise of God, but the v'hakimoti itself is about a specific oath that's been sworn, and in this case, it's an oath that's sworn under the circumstances between God and a particular character and his family. I am swearing you an oath. You and your children will not die in this flood. I have made you a promise. You can trust me. And again, I go back to this context of he's entering an ark. It's really scary. This is really scary. And he goes on for a longer explanation that we're not going to dive very deeply into, that we're going to roughly skip on the page 5 of 10, which is, because, well, long source packet, all about Brit, which you can read to on your own. And it's all about these different layers and levels of Brit and establishing covenant. But I thought that it was terrifically interesting that v'hakimoti itself, lehakim, is this idea of the establishment and upholding all rolled into one. It's not just berit itself, but that it's the establishment and upholding of an oath between God and other people. So far we have the explanations that it's to quell the fears in Noah's heart, and then that it's not just to quell the fears, but to swear an oath and a promise that's going to be upheld between God and Noah, and not just between God and Noah, but between God and Noah and God and each of the members of Noah's family, that they are going to survive the flood itself. And then we get to the next piece and Bob's question. Ha'emek hadavar, which I was introduced to because I never studied the Nitziv before I got here, and Rabbi Adam Kligfeld had me breaking my teeth every Wednesday for about 4 years. We were studying it, Rabbi Ari Lucas and Rabbi Kligfeld and I were studying this together. This is one of the relatively shorter commentaries. This one is the explanation. Shebarach Hashem et Adam v'Chava. This refers specifically, this verse, this V'hakimoti epriti, what does it refer to? You were prescient, or you read the packet very quickly. This refers to the blessing that Hashem gave to Adam v'Chava, gave to the first human beings who made it through that generation in Eden. And the consequence here is Noah and his family will remain alive. What's the contrast? What's the blessing for Adam and Chava? And what's the contrast here? Think about this. What's the end of Adam and Chava's story in the Garden of Eden? They got kicked out. It's the sort of the promise of mortality. It's the promise of and the punishment of pain. It's the punishment for misdeed and going against direction. And here you have an Ish Tzaddik Tamim B'Dorotav, who some commentators, though Ibn Ezra and Or Chaim, think Rashi's not got this right, but Rashi would say being rewarded, right, for those righteous deeds, right? He's righteous. And so here it says there was a blessing that was promised in the Garden of Eden, and it's being fulfilled to a righteous person here. Oh, I love that so much. What a beautiful concept. Like, it's gonna come and it's gonna be fulfilled, but it was waiting for the right person who was like ready for it. This is begging a parable and a children's story for me, right? Like, you know, there was just this gift and this gift was waiting around and it needed to be given, but the gift couldn't be given until like the right person. This book has probably been written, but you know, and the gift like needed to be given to the right person. It was just like waiting for the right person. So it was like this brit. It's as if brit, which we know so differently. What do we think of brit as? We think of it as covenant for people, right? Right? We think of it as when we bring a child into our family. We think of it as covenantally bringing them into the entire peoplehood. We think of brit, we think of people who convert to Judaism as joining covenantally, as choosing to join covenantally an entire peoplehood. But here, hakimoti et briti is a swearing of an oath, a promise, and it's a cross-generational promise of a bracha, of a blessing that winds up getting fulfilled in reward for righteous deeds. And brit is its promise. Brit is closer to like a modern Hebrew meaning of the word. It's a pact, and it's also something quite personal for Noah in this particular time. So that could have been it, and that could have been the thing that this hinged on, but I wanted to add a little bit of a special addendum to this. I love this personal reassurance. This is not something that has like I don't have a moral teaching to draw out of this to say to all of you, and this, and therefore you can go home and make your week better from it. I just think it's a lovely evolution of Brit in our tradition. But there is another aspect of this, that related cousin of the piece, the way that time was suspended there for Noah, that I do think we can draw something from. So one of the things that I talked about this past Friday night, was anybody here at Sorvev on Friday night? Not the same cross crowd? Maybe some people were online. Tybal was online, and Joanna might have been online. So some of you might have heard him. The two of you were online, were here on the field. So I talked a little bit about Bex Rosenblatt's Torah on Isaiah, which was the Haftorah from this morning, and the idea of God's stretchiness in time, and this idea of suspending ourselves on Shabbat. So God's expansion, the ongoing nature of creativity and creation, and how God needs to do tzimtzum each week, and so do we. We have to freeze ourselves in time every single week and believe that the world can go on without us. That's what we are all doing right now. We have to believe that we can cease our own creative selves the way that God did. We have to believe that we can make room for ongoing and evolving creation of the world, and also believe that we can freeze each week and let the world go on without us, and the world will still rotate, and it'll be okay, and allow ourselves to be specks in it. And time has felt very, very strange over the past while during COVID. There is not a whole lot of halachic literature that speaks very clearly to the experience that all of us might be having to some degree or another, being quarantined over and over again, feeling like the months have passed very quickly and also very slowly, not understanding the way that sleep sometimes overcomes us, and sometimes sleep won't come at all. We have insomnia that we don't understand. Like, it's as if like time is happening to us in different ways, because when our environments around us, when our environs don't shift, when they don't change, when we're stuck and locked inside, when Zoom is the same, right? When the meetings literally don't shift and the space doesn't shift, it's hard for us to track time in that way. Now imagine being inside the ark. Imagine being in the middle of a sea with no land markers, with no sun and no stars, because the clouds are above and raining down from the heavens, and there's pouring rain. And what good would a calendar do you, right? You're scratching perhaps, not notches on the wall, and that's all you got. What would time possibly have been? So I brought this beautiful responsum from a contemporary halachic voice, whom I love very much, and I sometimes turn to on bizarre topics like, what do astronauts do when they go to space about a halachic conception of time? That's about as close as I can get to understanding what it might be like to be locked up inside the ark. And by the way, that's the reference that he uses too. He comes back to this parsha too. And he says that we should understand, and some of you may have heard this before in terms of the understanding of the acts of creation, that when we don't see the sun set, it's as if a 24-hour period didn't happen to us. Time can be suspended. It's as if time is not happening in a normative sense. One must act when one is an astronaut, or by the way, when one is in a place where the sun does not hardly set or set at all. One must fix their halachic times by the nearest location they can lock themselves adjacent to. That's what this responsum gets to. But the relevant idea is that they're in the ark, just as up in space, and just as I think a lot of people have experienced during this utterly bizarre time in our lives, it is possible to think of time as being suspended, particularly Shabbat time, as being a suspended time, even on earth, even when it's not actually up in space. And that a day isn't exactly a day. And he says, when normal time patterns based upon alternating periods of light and darkness marked by sunrise and sunset resumed, time continued as if it had not been interrupted, right? Then all of a sudden, part of what brought him peace again was time continuing and coming back to normal again. We don't know how much we need the basic functions of normalcy until we are missing them. We don't know how much we are thrown off by jet lag until we have the experience of being thrown wildly off on our basic functions. We don't know until we have an inner ear infection how much we can be thrown off by being dizzied just by standing up. We have basic functions that we go through the world and try to make it through and function based on kind of scanning what it is that's all around us. And Noah went through this only holding on to the brit that had been promised him by God, going into this place of fear. And that's sort of that thin thread that connects it to the beginning part of the teaching, this idea that Noah's only hope and Noah's only trust could come from that brit relationship that he had with God. And while he was in there, he didn't have anything tangential necessarily to hold on to. So what I get from this is the following. It completely rewrites for me that moment of the skies parting and the bird flying off and coming back with an olive branch. It's the return of a sunrise and a sunset. It's like the return of birds chirping again. It's the return of some sort of a diurnal setting to the body. It's the being able to sleep without melatonin. It's just going back to a normative routine and feeling like a self again, and feeling like a human being again, and feeling like you can survive, because you can be alive but not really understand what's happening to your body and why you feel so very off kilter. And I think many of us have had that experience before. So when you get to the Parsha next Shabbat morning, or when you hear it this coming week in weekday services, I wish for you this vision of Noah emerging after this, understanding that the fulfillment of the promise from God isn't some sort of a blessing of magical gifts and heaps of gold, or some sort of promise like we see promises fulfilled by, molten gods in other religions. What's the promise fulfilled from God to Noah? It's just that when the clouds part, he's back to sleeping again, and he can eat again, and the sun is going to rise again, and the sun is going to set again, and he's going to feel normal again. And that's my prayer too in this world. It's all I keep hoping for. And it's all I pray for when I pray for this new month that's coming up in this coming week. Honestly, it's what I'm praying for in this world. I don't need enormous miracles to look more miraculous than feeling like I can function again and like the people around me can function again. Like school kids can go to school, like we can have a vacation every once in a while, like people can go and visit their parents when they want to visit their parents, and we can just go and walk about and go to a park and be. So that's my prayer, and it's my hopefulness for Noah. It's this return to normalcy, that God is the establisher of a covenant, of that oath, and comes back, and that we can feel it once again in that normalcy of our world. And that's where I am with Noah this year. And thanks for learning that with me and being with me in it. We're going to do Mariv together. Before we do, there are some benchers on the tables. We're going to take a beat. Somebody here who ate bread is going to lead us in benching. I'm going to ask for a volunteer. And while that's happening, I'll turn around the bima and get us all focused. One more thing. Well, first of all, is there somebody who can volunteer to lead us in benching who ate bread? Someone who had a bagel washed and wants to maybe lead us in benching? Just need a Z moon and then we'll bench to ourselves. Yeah? Okay, Gary will do that in a moment. And then do either of the two Avelim want to lead us in Mariv for tonight? Do you want to lead in Mariv, Isaac? Okay, so Isaac will lead us in Mariv after that, but go ahead and bench and I'll get us set up here. So Gary's going to lead us. The benchers are, oh my gosh, I've forgotten the page numbers after so long. All right. If you are still benching, you can continue at your own pace. Isaac is going to lead us in weekday Mariv, which you can find in your Sidurim on pages 264 or 200 or 137 or any other number of pages. Invite you to rise, and then you can be seated afterwards for the Baruch Hu.
והוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית וירבה להשיבה פה ולא יאיר כל חמתו אדוני הושיע המלך יעננו ביום קרינו ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
You can be seated.
הוא מעביר יום ובין לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני המרי ברבים, אהבת עולם בית ישראל. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו, והם נגי יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם ואהבת את אדוניך. ושבתך בביתך ובעבודך שם. ואוהב לשמוע. ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור דבר בני ישראל. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, אדוני ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך בעלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות עושה פלא מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה ליאנו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל והשכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו. ושמור שתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעד. ותגיע בשעות אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני לעולם ועד. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ועל כל מעשיו.
אמן.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, וילמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובמכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לא נעלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה, בריחו לאין להאמין כל ברכתה ושירתה, תשפחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן.
Amen. We rise and move into our whispered private Amidah. If you're using a Siddur in which you're using weekday Mariv that is not specific to the end of Shabbat, don't forget to include the special paragraph internal to the weekday Amidah just at the beginning after Atahonan. If you're still praying your own private Amidah, please don't rush. Continue at your own pace. We continue now together with Chatzi Kaddish. We're on page 279 in Lev Shalem.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
Amen.
בעלמא דיבר חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, אמרו אמן.
אמן יהי
יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לא
לעולמיה.
נעלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעין להאמין כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא, ואמרו אמן.
Amen. We can be seated.
יושב בסתר עליון. יקראני וננהו עמו אנוכי בצרה, אכלסהו ואכבדהו, אורך ימים אשביעהו וערהו בשועתי, אורך ימים אשביעהו וערהו בשועתי.
We turn back to page 216 in the Lev Shalem to the second paragraph on the page, all at their Sidurim. We just continue on to the next page. 216, second paragraph.
ואתה קדוש יושב תהילות ישראל וכרז אל זה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מול כל הארץ כבודו מקריאים ותצאני רוח ושם אחרי כל רעש גדול ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו תלני רוחה בריך יקרא דאדוני מאתר בית שכנה אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני מלכותו אדוני צבאות עמנו מתקרב לנו ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני אדוני חפץ למען צדקו יגדיל תורה ויאדיר.
We go back to Evening Mariv in our Sidurim. We're on page 280 in Lev Shalem. Kaddish Shalem.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה
Amen.
בעלמא דיבר חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובכל ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה וזמן קריב אמרו אמן
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לאין להאמין כל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן כי יתקבל צלעות הון ודאון דכל ישראל כאדם אבונדי וישמעיה ואמרו אמן יהי שלום רבה מן שמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן
Amen. We rise for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל לתת גדולה להושיב ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד
Mourners Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה
Amen.
בעלמא דיברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לאין להאמין כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen. Isaac Yeshakoch, are you sure you're not German Yeki? Because like that was 7:19 on the dot. So. Okay, we're about to do Havdalah here. I want to encourage you to join us this week, both for regular weekday services and also for Rosh Chodesh that's coming up, and for all other programming, including our Green Team programming and other wonderful things that are starting up now that we're back in the quote-unquote regular Achrei Chagim time of the year. It's been wonderful to be together on the field and on Zoom. We're continuing to try to enhance our hybrid experiences. We're still learning. Bear with us. Here we go. Yanai na nai 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 yanai nai 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 Yanai na nai 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 nai. Yanai na nai 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 nai. Yai na nai na nai nai nai. Yai na nai na nai nai oh. Yai na nai na nai nai nai. Yai na nai na nai nai nai. Hine el Yeshuati. Heftach v'lo efchaid. Yozi v'zimarat ya. Adonai v'yihi li lishua. Ushaftamayim besason. Mimanei Yeshua. L'Adonai Yeshua. Alam chavir chatecha sela. Adonai tzivaot. Imanu Miskavlanu Elohei Yaakov Selah Adonai Tzivaot Asher Yadam Poteach Bach Adonai Hoshia Hamelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu LaYehudim Hai Taora Desimcha Visasom Mikar Kinti Yelanu Kosi Yeshu Hotesa Uveshem Adonai Ekra Yainanai Yainanai Nai Yainanai Yainanai Nai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei biorei ha'esh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lecho ben or lechoshech ben Yisrael hamim ben yom hashvihi l'sheshet yemei hamaseh. Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kol. Hamavdil ben kodesh lecho, chatoteinu yimcho, zareinu v'chaspeinu yarbe yarbe kacho, v'hakochavim balayla, zareinu v'chaspeinu yarbe yarbe kacho, v'hakochavim balayla. Shavua tov, 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 Shavua tov. Shavua tov, everybody. Shavua tov all on Zoom and YouTube. Great to see you. Great to have you here. There are